Welcome to Midnight Paralysis. Enter if you dare.
It was late October, around 2 in the morning. The rain was pouring down heavily, blurring the windshield of my car. I was driving along a quiet, desolate highway in North Carolina, completely exhausted after a long 12-hour drive. The radio had died miles ago, leaving behind only static. My head was heavy, and my eyes were fighting to stay open. That was when I saw it through the heavy rain, a faded, flickering neon sign glowing in the dark. The letter M was blinking rapidly, making a soft buzz. It read, Whispering Pines Motel. It looked like something straight out of an old film, hidden behind a row of tall, dark pine trees. I didn't care how creepy it looked. I just needed a bed for the night. I turned my car into the cracked asphalt driveway. The tires crunched against the wet gravel. I parked right outside the main office and stepped out into the freezing night air. The air smelled of wet earth, rot, and old wood. As I opened the door to the office, a small brass bell chimed above me. The inside was dim, lit only by a flickering desk lamp. Behind the counter sat an old man. He was wearing a faded brown jacket, and his eyes were sunken deep into his skull. He didn't even look up when I walked in. He just kept staring straight ahead at a dead television screen. I cleared my throat softly. "Excuse me," I said, "I need a room for one night." Slowly, very slowly, his head turned toward me. His pale blue eyes fixed on mine. His face was entirely expressionless. "Room 4, he whispered, his voice dry like dead leaves. "Ground floor. End of the hallway." He slid a heavy iron key across the wooden counter. Attached to it was a scratched plastic tag with the number 4 stamped into it. "Pay in the morning," he added, turning his head back toward the blank TV. I took the key. It felt strangely cold, almost ice-like in my hand. I walked back out into the rain and pulled my small suitcase from the trunk. I walked down the narrow, covered walkway toward room 4. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet with every step. I reached the door, inserted the key into the brass lock, and turned it. It gave a sharp, metallic click. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me immediately. It was a suffocating mix of damp carpet, mothballs, and something else, something sweet, yet rotting. I turned on the light switch near the entrance. A single yellow bulb hummed to life overhead, casting long, strange shadows across the room. The decor was ancient. Faded floral wallpaper peeling from the corners, a small wooden desk, and a queen-sized bed covered in a heavy, dark red quilt. I locked the door behind me, turning the deadbolt twice. I tossed my bag onto the desk and sat down on the edge of the bed. The mattress creaked loudly under my weight. Silence filled the room, so thick you could hear the rain dripping off the roof outside. I took off my shoes, climbed into bed, and pulled the cold quilt up to my chin. I closed my eyes, hoping to fall asleep instantly. But sleep didn't come. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up abruptly. The room was freezing cold. I could see my own breath forming faint white clouds in the dim light coming through the window curtains. Then, I heard it. A quiet, rhythmic sound. Knock. 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 It wasn't coming from the front door. It was coming from inside the wall directly behind my headboard. I froze. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. I held my breath, listening intently. The knocking stopped. Silence returned for a few seconds. Then, a faint sound began. It sounded like nails, slowly dragging across the wallpaper. Scraping. Scraping. From right behind the plaster. I sat up quickly, pulling the blanket tight around myself. "Hey! I shouted, my voice trembling slightly. "Who's in there?" No response. Just the continuous, slow scraping sound. I swung my legs out of bed, my feet hitting the cold floorboards. I walked over to the wall and pressed my ear gently against the peeling wallpaper. The moment my ear touched the wall, the scraping stopped dead. For 5 excruciating seconds, there was absolute silence. Then, a voice whispered from inside the wall. It was paper-thin, raspy, and stood right next to my ear. "Help me," it breathed. "It's so cold down here." I jumped back, horror shooting through my entire body. My breathing came in short, ragged gasps. I looked around the room in pure panic. That was when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Near the baseboard, right beneath the bed, the wallpaper was torn and hanging loose. I knelt down, my hands shaking uncontrollably, and pulled the loose wallpaper further back. Behind it was a small, square wooden door. A crawl space access door, painted over multiple times, but now slightly jarred open. A draft of freezing, foul air poured out from the dark opening. I pulled out my phone and switched on the flashlight. I angled the beam of light into the dark opening. The light cut through the thick dust. Inside, the crawl space stretched under the entire motel floor. And there, lying in the dust just 2 feet away from the door, was an old leather wallet, covered in cobwebs. With a trembling hand, I reached into the dark space and grabbed the wallet. I opened it up under the light of my phone. Inside was a driver's license. The face on the ID belonged to a young man. The date on the card read July 1994. Below the ID was a folded piece of yellowed paper. I unfolded it carefully. Written in dark, frantic handwriting were the words, "He locks us in from the outside. Room 4 never leaves." My blood ran completely cold. I stared at the paper in total disbelief. Before I could process the terror, I heard a sound from deep inside the crawl space. Far beyond the reach of my phone flashlight, something was moving. Heavy, dragging footsteps moving slowly through the dry dirt. Step by step. It sounded like someone dragging a heavy chain across the ground. A low, distorted laughter echoed through the hollow space beneath the room. It was not human. I dropped the wallet, scrambled backward on my hands and knees, and rushed toward the main door. I grabbed the door handle and twisted it frantically. It wouldn't budge. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled with all my strength. The door was completely jammed shut. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the small wooden crawl space door swing wide open. A long, bone-thin arm, covered in dark dirt and dried blood, slowly reached out onto the faded carpet. Panicking, I threw my entire body weight against the front door. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the wooden frame splintered with a loud crack, and the door burst open into the rainy night. I didn't look back. I ran blindly through the pouring rain, threw myself into my car, turned the ignition key, and slammed my foot on the gas pedal. I drove for 2 straight hours until I reached a well-lit gas station in the next town. Trembling, I dialed the local police department and told the officer on the line everything. "Sir," the officer continued slowly. "The Whispering Pines Motel burned down to the ground 12 years ago. 5 people died in that fire. Nobody has lived on that land since." My throat went dry. I slowly lowered the phone from my ear. I turned my head and looked down at my passenger seat. Lying there, on the wet leather seat of my car, was the heavy iron key with the plastic tag. Room 4. And next to it, was a fresh layer of wet, dark dirt.